Hey guys, Gaming Guru here. Gonna be showing you my routes and kind of the reason behind I use these routes with mining in Wrath Classic, for both Cobalt, Serenite, and kind of Titanium. Even though Titanium's kind of a rare spawn, so we're gonna be starting here with Cobalt. I use I use Borean Tundra for the Cobalt farm. Because I'm an engineer, the steam clouds give a little extra oomph to the farm. Um, Cobalt's probably the most annoying to me just because there's not like a good concentration like there is in Serenite, right? So you can start at really any point you'd like. For me, it kind of depends on where I'm coming from. But the big thing is to kind of go this outer edge here, come on down, and then I come up this way. A lot of times I'd fly all the way down here, but I was finding that I just wasn't finding anything in these areas cobalt wise. But if I come up this way, I'll find, I can hit these steam clouds with cobalt veins, come on down this way. This mine right here, that's all inside these four. These spawn consistently, so expect to be dismounted. Might want some movement speed if you're trying to speed up your farm. Up through here, this one is underwater. Again, might not be something you want to stop for, but if you're not stopping for it and no one else is getting it, that's going to take away from the zone. And then you're going to come up here to the caldera, back up this direction, kind of come up through the Borgrock outpost area. There are two in the mine in this cave here. The cave's layered and pretty big. So I would head in there at your own discretion. I typically don't, but let's go ahead and fly this route. And I'm gonna fly each route for each location that I use, so you can kind of see the direction I go, and if there are any like places where you can use your maximum mining distance, or you can land on something to avoid mobs, I'll show you that as well if it comes up, because it doesn't always come up. So again, this is another one that's an inside one, but it is small, easy to get in and out of. If you have movement speed on your boots or an actual movement speed, it's quick little burst and pick up some stuff. You can actually remount pretty far into the cave and pop back on out. Now, some of the guides that you can find online show you to come here. I've never personally found one here. Obviously by my Gathermate map. And I've been doing this for, I don't know, close to 1,000 worth of cobalt ore, which is 4 or 5 hours at best, longer at worst. Cobalt is not my favorite farm. It's not highly concentrated. It is more of a necessity type farm, mostly because my wife plays with me and she needed to level her blacksmithing, and I didn't want to buy cobalt and she won't buy materials. So I farmed it all up for her. Well, some of it. I did trade some other materials for cobalt as well and whatnot. So, yeah. This route has some spots where you will have to fight for stuff, but if you're doing this at, max level, that's no big deal. It's not highly contested, so you don't have to worry as much about people trying to run in and snake your stuff while you're clearing out a mob. This route will also work for dual gathering. So if you're mining and herbalism, you can pick up herbs along this route as well. I don't have a dual gatherer leveled up just yet. It's in the works, but I hate leveling, so I don't know if it'll ever get leveled anytime soon. Once I get my main and maybe an alt leveled, particularly a gatherer that specifically supports my main, I honestly really just don't get too far into the leveling process. WoW's leveling is very boring and, I don't know, it's linear and monotonous. And you can see at the back of the cave we have one node. So we're going to dip in here and go grab that. If I'm going to hit sprint, I should probably continue sprinting and not stop. Like I said, this one is all the way at the back. You may or may not want to come in here this far, depending upon your class or, you know, your time, but there are not a lot of spawns that spawn at once here. So you can skip out on some of these at your own risk, or you can just hope that someone else is gonna go get them. Depending upon the time of day you're doing this, there may or may not be out here questing doing this stuff. So I mean, if there are people here questing, you might be able to get past all the mobs without having to, you know, drop combat or, you know, fight your way through them. I'm actually doing this in the morning, sitting here drinking my coffee. And as you can see, there's not too many people out here right now. It is a Monday morning, and, you know, a lot of people are at work. I'm just lucky. Today is my normal day off. And here I am working, recording a video. One of those poachers smacked me while I was flying by. What a dick. All right. And here we are coming up to the underwater one. There are aggressive mobs in the water. But if you're doing it at this max level, you can avoid them. If you're not too worried about killing some extra stuff for extra coinage or whatnot, you know, have at it. I try and avoid as many mobs as possible when I'm doing this because I'm solely after the ore. Now we're about to hop over to the caldera. Be careful when you hop over to the caldera, because if you fly over the bubble, it will dismount you, and there's a chance, if you're not an engineer or a class with a invuln, or, you know, like a priest for Lev or a mage for Blink, you'll crater, and that's never a good feeling. So it's rather annoying. So I'm gonna pop up my map here. Where the flight master is, you want to avoid. I typically go south, south and west of the bubble. You can go more north than east, but the south and west puts me more along the route I take. So that's particularly why I prefer to favor going south and west. So the caldera has the most focus for nodes out here. It's a small quest area, so if there are people questing that are miners, typically you won't find all that much. But occasionally, if there's no one out here, you're doing it at the right time, you can actually pick up, you know, a good 3-4 nodes in one pass. And that's usually a good feeling when it comes to Cobalt. God, Cobalt is not my favorite to farm, I'll tell you. I'd much rather be in Ice Crown or, yeah, Ice Crown. Sholazar, depending upon the time of day, is packed. And we'll talk more about that when we get to Sholazar. You can see there's lots of mobs here, big density. So landing in some spots, you might have to finagle trying to not get in combat. If you're not worried about getting in combat, you can flop down kind of wherever. If you're doing this while these are worth experience, I mean, you might want to stop and kill some while you're doing this. Kind of keep that XP bar rolling. But I typically don't do any major farms while leveling personally, just because it will slow down both your farm and your leveling process. So you typically want to separate those out. Now, popping out of the caldera, there is a cave full of murlocs over here. And there's a couple of nodes that can spawn here. One's pretty far in, which is this back one here. There's another one that's literally right there at the entrance. The one right at the entrance, I'll typically pop in to go get. The one pretty far back, unless I'm having pretty bad rotations, I typically won't pop in to go get it. You can get some underwater. Again, if it's one of those things where you're like, man, I really haven't gotten any and I need a lot and I'm tired of doing this, I would start going into those more coveted areas. You see here, there's one. Ooh, nice. Actually got a blue gem out of a cobalt. That's pretty rare. There are some areas that are pretty mob dense. So, and now we're gonna fly over one that typically has inside. Like I said, this cave area over here is pretty big. It's very deep. Not necessarily something that I go into. So that's the typical route. You can fly through the middle portion here if you're looking to get more of the steam clouds. But this spot is heavily farmed in here by the engineers because the gnomes here, you can get the Jeeves recipe. A little extra tidbit for you there. It not exactly common, but if you're max level, you're looking to get that before, it becomes available. Now's the good time to do it. And I'm not even standing at the right spot. I should probably pay more attention. Grabbing that steam cloud, which again is a great boost if you're doing this for, say, a little bit of extra income. Grabbing steam clouds, because more than likely eternal fires are still worth something on your server. Eternal waters are probably not worth much, but they do sell. All right, moving on to the second location here, guys. This is Bot Central, overcamped, overfarmed, but if you do it at the right time and you're not contested, you can make a ton of Serenite per hour. So here in Sholazar Basin, I honestly found it is far more efficient to stick to the outer edge. There is one area right here where it's super condensed. You'll kind of dip and then go back to outer edge flying. You can get a lot of the fire clouds here, occasional steam cloud there. But let's go ahead and fly this route. I don't expect to find too much. Kind of flew it a little bit earlier and it was all gone. Reason why Sholazar is overcamped is because you only have layers. There is no phasing. So it doesn't matter how many quests you've done or not done here. Everyone is stuck in the same pool. The only thing you have are layers, and there's no way to tell what layer you're on. You can try getting invites from guildies to help you flop layers. If you're going to do that, I would try finding guildies in Dalaran while it has enough people to have more than one layer, because that's based on zone population. Or at least it should be. And Dalaran, that's where everyone hangs out, right? It's the new Stormwinter Ironforge. So typically you should have at least 2 layers. But depending upon your server population, Sholazar might not even be a viable farming solution for you. Especially if you're on one of those bigger servers like Benediction, right? Because farming stuff, you're just going to lose out to the copious amounts of bots, more than likely. I'm on a much smaller server than Benediction. I'm over here on Westfall. So some of these farming routes are not overcamped. But even on this smaller server, you're going to see probably in this pass alone that Sholazar, even on a smaller server, is super overcamped, right? Just lost out on titanium. Boo-hoo. That sucks. Oh, well. Like I said, this is where everyone comes to farm because it is the lowest level zone in which you can get the highest level materials. So materials to effort, it is quote unquote the best. If you are 80 and can actually kill mobs, if you want to do Serenite, I would typically recommend Ice Crown over Sholazar, unless you can do Sholazar in off hours. Off hours Sholazar is absolutely amazing. Some mornings when I can come in here and there's not a lot of people, I'm pushing like 300 Serenite or an hour, which is, in my opinion, an astronomical number. Nice. And so if you're 80, you can sometimes sneak at maximum mining range, just like that, a node, and not even have to worry about the mobs standing over them. Get some nice little titanium. Having some sort of thing you can do to a mob if you know the area is contested, like blinds, stuns, a pet, right? All those little tricks that you used to see the hunters and druid bots and all that other stuff do. They're all tools you can use too, and I would definitely recommend not playing fair when it comes to contested areas. So again, this is the second dip that I do off the wall. And that's because I'm an engineer, and there you can get a lot of crystallized clouds. Now, if you are in dual gathering, say mining herbing, I would say you could alter the route a little bit depending upon your daily focus. Damn it, not long enough. Might lose this one. Nope. Okay. You can alter a little bit depending upon your focus. So if you're coming in here and metals are secondary for right now and you want more herbs, you could dip a little bit more into the interior. But again, a lot of times you're going to have just as many herbs that spawn near the metal as not. So this outer wall is just way easier, way less mobs to contend with. And just far more potential spawns. We are we're getting like 2/3 of the way through this. So we popped in about here. You can see we found only a couple of nodes. You can get a good amount of titanium here in Sholazar, but I have not seen as many nodes as I have in Icecrown. So depending upon your need, I would typically do Icecrown overall. If you only care about Serenite, by all means, come to Sholazar, especially if you're lower level. If you're doing this at like 75 to 77, Sholazar is probably a much better place to do it just because the mobs are much lower, less risk of death, not as many flying mobs that have ranged attacks. Because gargoyles and Icecrown can absolutely destroy you. This is a much safer lower level friendly farm. The only thing you want to watch out for if you've come here and done some questing is that if you are either haven't chose the Frenzy Heart or you chose the Oracles, there are a lot of Frenzy Heart spear throwers in some of these spots, so be careful and mindful of that as well. So here we are coming to the end, and hasn't been too much here. We saw titanium, didn't get it, which kind of sucks, but it happens. The one thing I'd say is if you're going to be out here in Sholazar, understand you're going to be competing. You're going to miss out on nodes. Choose the nodes you go after carefully, especially if you see mobs around. Try and watch your surroundings, see if someone's, stalking you or if you're behind somebody else, right? I think someone just flew past me there. It's highly contested. I know I probably said that like 3 or 4 times already, but that's just because I want to hammer that point home that, you really got to choose the time you're coming to Sholazar to do farming. And I think that's the case for just about any place, but Sholazar in particular, because there is no phasing. There is only layering here. There's no real phasing for Borean Tundra or like Howling Fjord if you want to go there either, because there's no quests that alter how the zone functions or what is available in the zone like there is for Icecrown, right? There are story phases for Icecrown, and apparently I didn't click that, so I kind of stood there like a dummy. You see here on the tail end, I've already gone over, but we are heading to Icecrown right now. And I'm picking up some extra nodes here as we go. And I actually got a good amount of steam clouds on this pass, which is pretty nice as well. Picking up a good amount of crystallized fire. Here's a slow guy, level 77. DK. No guilds. Good chance that could be a bot. Might not. Who knows? But that is a very typical scene in Sholazar. I got the hiccups. And I'll be honest, even heading to Icecrown, this route is so ingrained in me. I just automatically do it, right? Hand on mouse, just use right click to change the direction I'm facing. And I guarantee you that's probably a bot. His turn was very precise and at a set point. Now, you can come up here to this shelf. You do have mines that occasionally spawn up here. The problem is that there is a huge mob density up here. None of them drop loot. None of them give experience. It is just typically not worth trying to kill these guys. Like, absolutely at all. I mean, the most common one I see is right here. Yep, right there. You can see there's a Frost Mage getting it. Used his freeze in place. Frost Nova. That's the name of the ability. God, Guru, we've been playing this game for how long and can't remember things? I swear. Getting old. You lose your memory. Alright, so we're going to come up near the Fleshworks up here in Icecrown. I don't normally start on this side of Icecrown. I honestly normally start over here. Coming from Dalaran, because there's some nodes, some Serenite nodes that spawn here. Now in the Fleshworks, there's a cave right here that does spawn Serenite. Occasionally, you'll get Titanium in there. I personally won't go in there for anything less than Titanium, but that's because I don't really care all that much for Serenite. The price for Serenite has tanked. And really, the majority of my mining I do now is to stockpile titanium ore and prep for Ulduar. If you didn't know, as far as I understand it, Ulduar is when your epic gems are going to be coming into the game. I could be wrong on that. I've seen some people say that it's TOTC or Tournament of the Champions, or Trial of the Champion. But I'll be honest, I believe it's Ulduar, right? If I'm wrong, then I'm going to have a ton of titanium ore sitting in an alt bank for a really long time. But I normally aim to get a couple of stacks a day, considering we have no idea when Phase 2 is coming out. So, it's just one of those prep things, right? I know most high-end raiders are either purchasing it off the market when it gets cheap, since gold's pretty easy to make in Wrath. I'm a by-hand farmer. I'm weird. I find some of this actually methodical. Don't hate me. But I guess that's what kind of drove me to kind of share what I like to do when it comes to by-hand farming. By-hand farming is, I don't know, it saves me gold, and then I have to do less dailies to get consume money and whatnot. If you're someone who does zero farming and does some swiping, I'm not into that personally, but to each their own, I always say. But as we're going through this kind of path here, you can see that this path is actually much longer than the other one. The great thing about Icecrown when farming is that it is a longer route. It does have zone phasing. And that's because of the story quests out here, right? So you can, and I wouldn't recommend it, do 0 of the story quests, do 0 of the phasing, because that's where I would assume you're going to find the most bots and people that leveled to 77 or so got flying for their farming tune and just stopped because they don't care about getting to 80 or anything. They only care about getting access to the highest end materials to farm and gather, right? So I would suggest doing at least some of the story stuff, right? Because you will find other people out here. This person, now some of the areas are not phased, right? And again, if you're running into a lot of people, hit up a guildie or a friend that's in Dalaran. Get a different layer, hopefully. It'll help. Or you can stick to areas that have story stuff tied to them, that phase, and you can actually stick to those areas. You'll limit your ability to kind of find nodes, but it could, in theory, give you more control over how much of each node you see. When it comes to an expansion that's, in my opinion, kind of small like this, not a lot of areas to farm these materials that are actually like good areas to farm. You're gonna have competition. You're gonna have to fight for some of these nodes, and some of your farming has to be based on when your server just doesn't have as many of those people out there farming. Some servers it could be during peak raid hours, right? If your guild doesn't raid during peak raid hours, it might be beneficial for you to go out and do your farming then. Early morning farming, if you're up early, or super late night, if you're up late night, that might be the time for you to go farm. This area right here, kind of segueing, is a highly mob dense area. With mobs that have quite a big aggro range, to be honest. Like, this guy's aggro to me, but I am standing kind of in the rock, so apparently he couldn't get to me. I haven't really seen that before. Sometimes landing on these platformed rocks or ice chunks, really, they will stare at you, put you in combat, but they technically can't get to you. So you can snag the node. If you can drop combat, you can drop combat. Again, I wouldn't jump to those areas if you have a bunch of people out, or if you have someone stalking you, because those people could be just waiting for the mob to engage you, because more than likely you're going to have to come off the node, make it so you're no longer hittable, and then go back to the node, which means that they're going to drop onto the node and attempt to take it from you. And I've seen nine times out of 10, that split second you come off the node is the difference between getting it and not getting it. Sometimes it is better to sacrifice a contested node to someone who's going to have to clear the mob, right? And move on, let them clear the mob, because that is time they're wasting clearing the mob. And then you pick up 2 or 3 nodes in the meantime and get some good distance between you two. Sometimes it absolutely is worth, for dominance, right? To let someone know, hey, no, this is my farming area, get the hell out of here. At that point, it comes down to perseverance. There's times where I've been leapfrogging with somebody, and I get lucky. I get back-to-back rich, or I'll get a bunch of titanium and they're getting base level nodes, and they leave because they're getting jack shit and you're getting all the good stuff, right? Demoralizing people is a good way to try and squeeze people out of farming areas. It's not as a easy thing to do in a game like World of Warcraft to squeeze somebody out of a farming area, because there's no way to truly force them out, right? Unless you can actually just take all the nodes, which is really hard to do because there is a time frame involved with actually gathering those resources. It's not instantaneous, and it's not like some of the older games or other games where you can, say, PvP somebody to literally physically force them out and give you a time buffer between when they return, to kind of give yourself a better rate of farming while they're not there, right? So you kind of have to head into this understanding that you will compete with other people, and it's going to be, or it can be, pretty pretty annoying or frustrating at times. But the one thing I say is keep at it. Reach out to guildies, have them invite you, because you can, like I said, you can get bounced to other layers. Sometimes you're competing with one person, get bounced to a layer. Now you're competing with 10, right? Or you can be competing with 10, get layered. Now you're competing with 2 or 3, and now you're getting materials, even if it's still not at a great rate, right? Which is why some people prefer to make gold to buy what they need and fund the economy. That way, there's nothing wrong with that at all. These are just the routes I use, and because I am a by hand farmer. Now, when I first started the expansion, my main is a double crafter. Obviously, I didn't have this character leveled at all while I was, getting to 80 and prep for raids opening. And clearly, I bought materials at ludicrous prices, and it hurt my soul and made me cry. But I made some of that money back, and, now that the initial rush is over and I have my alts leveled, I don't have to do that again, right? Now, most people are like, well, what about the next expansion? I don't know if I would honestly go into Kata. I don't think most people will, to be fair. And the future raids don't necessarily introduce a ton of new craftable gear. It does introduce some, but not all that stuff is going to be for my particular main's primary spec, which is Prot Paladin. I am basically playing the easiest tank class in the game, because Prot Paladins just do abilities and get lots of threat. But that's a whole another video. So we are well over halfway through this route here. The couple of spots we're getting to here have higher level mobs, mostly all level 80s. So this is where maximum mining distance comes in. This is where having an ability to keep them from smacking you comes in. And again, if you're doing this at sub 80, some of these areas you might want to skip over, because they are level 80 mobs, and depending upon your gear level on your character, it might be a little tough to get some of these nodes. I mean, if you're coming in here with a character that was full solid and well plateau geared, right, because you ran a lot of GDKPs, or your raid team had multiple raids, and you got to gear out your alts in Sunwell plateau gear, because I know there are those characters that are out there. It won't be a problem, right? Sunwell plateau gear can basically carry you to 25-man raids. You actually don't even need to have full heroic gear to go into those raids and do okay, right? I wouldn't recommend a tank doing it, just because getting defense capped at 540 is a little bit of a challenge in the Sunwell Plateau gear, just because there is not a ton of defense on each piece, but that's a whole nother thing. Kind of going on a little side bit there. But here we are coming towards the end of the route here in Icecrown. And again, if you're doing it at the right time, it's going to be nodes galore. If you're doing it when it's a little bit busier like I am, which I haven't even seen a ton of people, I just know by feel how busy it is because I've been doing this for a bit. It can be sparse, it can be moderate, low density. It is 100% jam-packed with nodes, and it's great. It's a good farm. So if you guys enjoyed this information, feel free to hit subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment below if you find that there's a slightly better route you like to take. Share it. I love sharing great tips with other people, bringing this information to the community. If you didn't like it or you thought I was crazy, I thank you for watching this long, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next one.